Hello, hello, Kadena Army. We are back with another YouTube AMA for a Kadena Eco Project Spotlight. This time with Crankk, and we're really excited to talk everything distributed wireless infrastructure on blockchain. My name is Tyler Benster. I'm the tech adoption lead here at Kadena Eco. I got started with Kadena back in 2017 as the earliest institutional investor through my VC fund, Azimuth Ventures. And I've come on board more recently in the past year to help drive Kadena Eco and ecosystem adoption. And it's been a fantastic journey so far. I want to give a huge shout out to the community. Something that we're really focused on here at Kadena Eco is listening, engaging, and trying to do our best to be stewards of this platform and to make sure that we can drive Kadena to be the best layer one blockchain out there and into this ecosystem of huge growth for builders ahead. I wanted to also highlight that today we have a really exciting project with Crankk in that it's a community-founded project. This is a project where we hadn't met Peter, weren't familiar with Crankk until he applied for a grant, and in reviewing grants was just so impressed with everything that he had done, all the progress he had made, and the momentum that was there. And I think this momentum is something that we're really trying to support with our $100 million grants program. And so I hope that Peter's story and part of what he's working on at Crankk will be of inspiration to the community as well. And that these are the types of projects that we love to support. And these are some of the insights from builders that we're getting, is hearing about some of these advantages of building on Kadena, hearing about some of the challenges, and then figuring out collaborative ways together that we can surmount those challenges to drive forward a new Web3 ecosystem that takes advantage of all the proof of work, decentralization, security, and scalability that Kadena provides. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get Peter on the stage here. But I think we might have a small technical difficulty, as I think that Peter may have disconnected. Well, bear with me for a moment, and I can give a little more context and provide an opportunity to do some background updating for, I see Peter had a fire alarm that went off. We'll have him back here in a moment. But first I'll talk a little bit about the grants and give a little ad hoc update here. So as you can see with the AMAs, we're starting to go through the round of the first cohort, doing some spotlights, introducing new projects to the community. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, we are hard at work readying for the second cohort. There's already a couple projects that are getting circled in and are sort of going through the legal work of getting grants signed. And we have a lot of work ahead to make our way through a couple hundred applications that are looking pretty competitive. And so appreciate patience as always. And for those that are in the grants application cycle, you can always feel free to reach out to either me or Joel or Dan or Francesco on Twitter or over email. We're always happy to touch base. Meanwhile, we seem to have resolved the fire alarm situation, and I'm really delighted to bring Peter onto the stage with me here. So please, let's give a warm virtual welcome to Peter.
Thank you. Move to another building.
That's great. Well, as with any new project, you're always having to put out fires, so it's perfectly poetic and symbolic here today. But Peter, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just start off by telling us just briefly a little bit about yourself. Would love to hear about your background and what brings you here today.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. And thanks for the introduction. Although I may not have heard all of it, but I'm sure it was great. My name is Peter Varga, and I've been a business application programmer all my career, and developed a strong interest in crypto, and started developing like 2 years ago, experimented with Ethereum, and then found Kadena, and then haven't left and will probably never do. And then started developing applications, and one of them is Crankk, or our most hopeful one is definitely Crankk, which is a proof of coverage crypto application. And what it does is it tries to prove that you're operating a network with global coverage, and then obviously the participants are miners and node operators who earn tokens for their contribution to providing this coverage.
Fantastic. So effectively, it's using some of these novel sort of crypto mechanisms and token distribution, tokenomics, in order to incentivize providing of a service, which is in this case wireless coverage. And so, yeah. So how can we think about this wireless coverage? What connects to these wireless networks, and what are some of the applications or use cases?
Right. So it's essentially IoT, and IoT has been going on for a while now, and then proved useful, and the market accepted a lot of different kinds of applications like home security, sensors, smart meters, um, warehouse logistics, tracking logistical equipment, tracking equipment, etc. So it's a broad industry, and then also not a small one. And then I guess the projected growth of this area is pretty huge, and you know. A distributed and community operated network is, of course, it will take less of an initial investment. We don't need billions of dollars to try to take on the challenge of providing global coverage. So the idea is definitely that start incentivizing node operators, make sure that the incentive is attractive enough, and then will stay so for a long time. So the network growth and then coverage growth is kind of assured, and then based on that, you can go out to any industry partner or potential customer, not excluding consumers. Go out there and then say that, yeah, we have this global coverage, and then it's really useful for these IoT devices. So why don't you come on board and become a customer?
Right on. So this idea of how to bootstrap global coverage, how to bootstrap a wireless network, I think it's very exciting because when we think about businesses and business models that are highly centralized, that also have the highest degree of customer dissatisfaction, it tends to be companies like Verizon and AT&T and Comcast and these big corporations that provide these sort of centralized networks. Now, granted, when we talk about Verizon, we're usually talking about iPhones and Android phones that are doing high data bandwidth. And with Crankk, we're talking more about LoRaWan technology, which we'll get into in a bit. But just wanted to highlight just how cool it is to think about decentralization as an answer to consumer and customer frustrations with these sort of centralized, all-powerful gatekeepers that have terrible customer service, terrible networks, outrageous pricing, and also manage to just like piss us off on a daily basis. So thank you for taking on this challenge on behalf of all of us.
Yeah, if I may add, I'm my thinking is along very along those lines very much. So it's like, you can the such large players have a certain inertia, and then I always think that, oh, it's good enough. But if you want to really innovate and try things quickly, then I think you need a player who's much more agile. And then I think that if it works all out, then we can be that agile, fast moving, at the same time, reliable partner.
Right on. So I want to dive a lot more into Crankk, the project, how it works, the technology, some of the economics and community that's now growing. But before we do that, I actually wanted to go back a little bit to your background because you said a couple things that are quite interesting. I know you mentioned that you started building on Ethereum, and you have done a bit of experimentation with different kinds of projects. I was wondering if you could just so the audience and we can all get to know you a little bit better. I'd love to hear a little bit about sort of what you were initially building on Ethereum, what challenges there may have been, and kind of what led you to Kadena.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I love talking about it. Um, Originally, I wanted to build something that's very similar to eBay or PayPal merchant services because I detected what was going on there. So what's the value proposition there? It's like a single bit of independently verifiable information. Has it been delivered? But if it's an independently verifiable piece of information, then you can use the blockchain to prove that, because it's essentially what blockchains are supposed to be able to do: bring an independently verifiable piece of information onto the blockchain, and then you can employ various methods like a bunch of nodes who we already trust and have maybe a higher stake can go out there onto the internet and get that piece of information. And then once 95% of respondents confirm that yes, the package has been delivered, then you do have that piece of information. And at the same time, the solution this way is not non-custodial, because of course when you use a PayPal merchant service, then PayPal is very glad to take your money, take the customer's money, and hold it until it's proven to have been delivered. So why won't the blockchain hold that money in a smart contract controlled account, and then the entire process can be fully automated. And so that was the first one. And then I thought of another. That was what I initially implemented on Ethereum, but then I saw the gas fees and then all the shenanigans. So then I thought,
Right,
well,
right. We always complain about Visa. If you're a merchant or run retail, a common complaint is like, oh my gosh, the credit card company takes 2% or 1.5% or 2.5%, depending on who you're working with. Like, how outrageous is that? And then you try and, I don't know, sell something for $10 on Ethereum, and your transaction fee might not be 20 cents. It might be $5, $10, $100, $200, depending on the time of year, depending on the price of ETH. You could have this enormous order of magnitude difference in the gas fees that you're paying. So it becomes difficult to think about, like, oh wow, it actually completely eliminates the ability to do small transactions. They just aren't, feasible.
That's exactly what I found out. Like at that time, it would have taken $6,000 to put one version of the smart contract onto the blockchain, and
Wow.
would have cost $60 to turn variable A from 1 to 2. So
Wow.
that was yeah. So and then so I found Kadena, and then as I mentioned, my background is large scale business application programming, and when I saw that, oh, there's a database behind it, you can now write select statements and inserts and updates. This is heaven. So I that got me very very enthusiastic, and of course the affordable gas fees as well. So something that you can calculate how much it's going to cost. So you may sell something for $1 and then still be okay with gas fees.
Yeah, I love that point, Peter. I think that when we talk about Pact, we often talk about some of these, fancier features like def packs and this ability to do formal verification. But oftentimes we kind of gloss over that Pact is on some level effectively like just a database query language that it lets you write to tables, read tables in a manner that has guarded access. And that mental model is actually fairly quick to understand. I remember when I did a first internship in high school at a tech company. My first job was writing SQL queries, and that was the type of thing that someone with not even a high school degree, but over the course of a few weeks can figure out with some tutorials. But the basic idea of reading and writing to tables is simple yet deceptively powerful which is in part why, we have entire industries and mega corporations like, SAP and Oracle and others that effectively are glorified providers of database software. Just a small tangent, but I appreciated you mentioning that.
No. I love that tangent. It is exactly so. I mean, the majority of billions of dollars are moving through the network from customer to merchant, and then they are mostly old, or at least 10, 20, 30-year-old code. And I mean, that's not to say that there's no development in this area, but we have to be realistic.
Yeah.
A lot of value is being moved through that legacy code.
But
And
yeah,
then
it's kind of, just to give a simple example, right? If I click, buy now on Amazon, effectively what's happening behind the scenes, there's a few more moving pieces in this, but ultimately, like, there's an insert statement that's going on to one of Amazon's databases that's like, new order was created, here it is. And then that, triggers a cascade of, all these order fulfillment stuff that then happens. But what you don't see when I click an order on Amazon is an opportunity to execute some arbitrary recursive code that lets me, pay once, but like actually receive like 10 items. And, that's sort of another sort of small example of how, recursion and sort of these sort of, general programming languages, while they provide a lot of power, if you're building, sophisticated applications, when you start talking about financial transactions, you start talking about blockchain, on some level, you have to think about operatively what's important. And, I just we'll move on the topics, but I could talk your ear off all day. I think we're having fun with the database stuff, but yeah, that point resonates with me.
Yeah, I think that just one short comment that yeah, obviously learning Pact. I had the database background, so the other stuff I had to learn, but it was again, let's say 50% then. And then the authorization structure is really interesting, and I found it also inspirational. Like to me, it reminds me a little bit like task-driven programming. That you know what you want to achieve, like transfer one Kadena to the other guy. So you need to say that that's going to be the outcome. And then that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so that's fantastic. So we heard a little bit about your background, and I love this this heritage of having experimented and built out multiple different projects, and then sort of seeing how Crankk has organically taken off, and now this becoming a more central focus. Um, so getting more specific into Crankk, could you tell us a little bit about proof of coverage, and what is that? What's that idea?
Well, we all know it's not my idea, but at the same time, I tried mining helium, and then I saw what was going on, and then what I liked, what I didn't like. But I could say, wanted to build something better. But the truth is, prove, I wanted to prove that I can do it.
Hmm.
So I guess that was the primary challenge. Uh, so proof of coverage, let's say, it's not really a proof. It's like a very likely. Um, we could talk a lot about what constitutes proof, and then how to get here. But one thing to consider is LoRa as a LoRaWan as a
So before we
as
get
a
too much in the technical
okay.
details, I guess first, just proof of coverage is at its basic, this idea that, I'm running some wireless hotspot and
Okay.
uh,
Yeah, so you operate like a router. It's like a Wi-Fi router, but it's not Wi-Fi. But in the US, it's 915 megahertz. So it's a sub-gigahertz radio band. It's an open band. You don't need a license to operate a radio in
got it.
that
So that
band. Just
lower,
like
that sort of lower frequency means that the actual coverage is a bit longer than Wi-Fi, but the
exactly,
difference is lower.
it has better propagation, and then also this. Uh, uh, they call it chirp as well. So it's a special modulation, and then it's very interesting the way it's done. But obviously, we don't want to get too deep into it. But it's a funny modulation technique that is more resistant to interference as
Hmm.
well. So lower
Got it.
frequency,
This is for like
longer.
robustness. You have a device, it's connected. What we really care about is making sure that this device, even if it's covered in mud, or cars are driving by, or there's obstacles in the way, that it stays connected. So that robustness is really important.
Right. The price we pay for this long range is, of course, low bandwidth, but
Mhm.
that's why it's tailored for low volume of communication, like sensor data, or even like text messages, or
Right.
something similar, but definitely not videos.
Right. So, just to sort of lay the scene here, right? So there's sort of this idea that if I am a miner on your network, that means that I have one of these routers that's providing, this LoRaWan wireless service. And so then I say, hey, Crankk, hey, network, I'm providing this service. Isn't that great? Like, I should get compensated for this. But then there's sort of this trust aspect of, well, how do we know that this person is providing this service? How can we trust that they actually have 10 LoRaWan routers in Antarctica and they aren't just making it up? So how does that kind of play into this proof of coverage idea?
Right. So I thought about it a lot, and then I thought that the kind of the director, or the choreographer choreographer needs to be the blockchain,
Hmm.
that you can, we can assume that you trust it, and then once you start there, then the problem becomes a lot easier, because once you want to, the network determines that, okay, it's time to perform this ping check, like this device will send something, and then the others will hear it, will listen to it, and then if they received it, they can confirm back to the blockchain that they did. And then someone, a consensus node, can come in, which is also almost the same as the others, but a little bit elevated privileges, will come in and check the results. And then also, we know that the blockchain, you have to assume that all the information on the blockchain is public.
Hmm.
So it means that the consensus node will start the the whole thing. It will tell over the blockchain. It will tell one node to please send a ping, and then it will also provide its public key for an asymmetric encryption. So only the node that started the whole process will be able to decrypt it.
Got it.
So both the sender node and all the witnesses will need to confirm the sending and the receiving, or witnessing, back to the blockchain, encrypted with the director's public key. So,
Got it.
and then how could you exploit it? I mean, there's
Actually, let's pause there for a second. Let's get to exploit second, but I wanted to sort of actively listen and kind of reflect back some of the information you just told us. So there's this interesting dilemma of, we need to be able to, prove coverage, show that someone that says they're running this router actually is. And so there's this scheme where basically there's a request that's made, as I understand it, to a router that says, hey, look, you gotta send out a ping and show that you're live. And then someone else is going to verify that that ping was sent out and received. And then those sort of messages are then actually recorded on the blockchain, so that it's sort of public knowledge now that the ping was sent and someone else acknowledged receipt. And then the consensus node can say, hey, look, yeah, it does seem like there's coverage there. And what's quite clever about that implementation is that it doesn't mean that all data needs to go through the blockchain, just these sort of proof of coverage pings. Is that the right kind of idea?
Absolutely, yeah. And then also, I mean, when you have a customer, even there's two things that we need to mention. LoRaWan is a standard that never thought of blockchain or a distributed network, so it's quite centralized. So you
Mm.
kind of need to use the same thing, but think of it as two different layers. One is, although uh, it happens over the same layer, but you can think of it as proof of coverage when it's in direct communication with the blockchain. And then when you actually want to receive customer data and then send it over to wherever the customer's pickup point is, at a API endpoint or something, then you need to send it there. You need to send it that way, and then in that case, it works as a normal LoRaWan centralized network.
Right on. So I want to get to the exploit thing in a bit, because I think that'll be very interesting for the more technically sophisticated audience. Before we do that, I want to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind, and that everyone kind of gets a clear mental image of what the capabilities of this might be. You know, assuming that the network's secure, assuming that it's reliable, robust, etc. So we'll kind of give Crankk the benefit of the doubt. So what would be some examples of devices or applications, you know, who might, you know, want to connect to this wireless network, you know, presuming that it, you know, exists and has global coverage?
Yeah. So the most popular answer is like smart meters and trackers and that sort of stuff. But I would like us to think of Crankk as having larger goals than that. Like nobody says that LoRaWan needs to stay the only. Hold on a second. There's some background noise.
No, no worries. So just to, you know, chime in, you know, maybe these smart meters might include, you know, air quality meters, or maybe they'd be, you know, like a tile-like tracking device, or maybe it could be,
Right,
um,
right, right. So Bluetooth and Bluetooth like Tile and AirTags. Two of my AirTags just got stolen yesterday. Looks like the rumor is correct. So Tile and AirTag kind of devices, and then a lot of when you think about LoRa, uh, you think like okay, like a larger industrial area or a logistical center where you can track moving devices. I mean, moving equipment, etc. And also, my favorite point, which is not mentioned that often, is security. And the past 5 years, I've been working on a security solution which I think has many unique features.
hmm.
So I think that if you take a page out of Kadena's playbook, like work on the ecosystem, and then I think that our approach should be similar. At try to work on your customers at the same time as um, try to increase the size of your network.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fantastic, right? So, you know, one of the things that was amazing when we were looking at your grant application was, you know, we looked at the crank.io website and saw that you were selling some of these LoRa routers, and that there were, you know, despite there being absolutely no marketing about Crankk to the Kadena community on Twitter, on Telegram, Discord, wherever, like just absolutely nothing, that people had already bought some of these LoRa routers and had started to mine, which was, you know, crazy to me. You know, talk about like organic growth, and then, you know, during the grant application cycle, again with sort of no marketing, there was this, you know, organic word of mouth where you started to get more sales of these routers. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about sort of how you've seen the community start, and kind of how it's been growing over the past couple months.
Yeah, I don't want to sound cheesy, but I would think that that has more to do with Kadena and a testament to the community of Kadena. Yeah, I got picked up first by Kadena enthusiasts for sure, and then slowly the word started getting out, more the broader outside the Kadena community, the broader crypto community, and then of course it reached the helium current helium miners, and a lot of people around it. And then also, I didn't plan it this way, but looks like there's a little bit of disillusionment with helium. And although we didn't plan it this way, it's a major part of my communication on Discord, and communicating with the community members. They tell me a lot about those experiences, and it keeps me thinking what's the best way, how we can do it, how can we make something at least as good or even better.
So speaking of community, we always try to take some questions from the community, and there's been some people already active in chat. So I'm going to start putting one or two of them up. If you're in the audience on YouTube, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, please feel free to ask questions, and we'll try and get around to them. Otherwise, I have a lot of questions and topics of conversation, and we'll take all of Peter's time selfishly with my own interests. But for now, we'll be generous and thank Curtis for asking this question from LinkedIn. So who will use the Crankk LongFi signal? So this is kind of getting back. We've talked a little bit about the kind of devices that might be used, but also be curious perhaps to build on Curtis's question. Who? Individuals, businesses. Who might be the end users of this?
Right. So I have some experience with marketing these type of solutions to companies. And I mean, I don't think they care so much about the technical solution. They care more about the value. And then I think that you can demonstrate a good value. And then you can explain why a little bit longer range is beneficial or useful, or how does it extend the all different kinds of use cases. So that's I've seen a lot of interest from companies regarding security and also logistics, and then also on the consumer side, I would love to have our miners as our customers as well. So I think that we will offer solutions for our end users as well. So they might take advantage of it, and then pay for the services with the tokens they already made, and then even there's leftover, and so the plan is something like this.
Fantastic. So that actually was a perfect tie-in to a question that just came in from Joe Morgan, which is wondering about the utility behind the Crankk token that you just mentioned, and why would someone want to own it? And so he draws this interesting comparison to Helium, which we've briefly touched on, where Helium powers the blockchain and pays for gas fees. But of course, Crankk is built on Kadena, and so there isn't this notion of gas fees associated with the Crankk token. So I was just curious if you could speak a little bit more to the purpose of the token and sort of how it plays a role in what Crankk is building.
Absolutely. So I think that the gas fee part is probably pretty negligible, and then the onboarding fees would surely be in Crankk. And then also, I mean, there's a lot of considerations around this, because when there's a lot of new joiners and a lot of onboarding to the network, then the like Helium case, that is the primary driver of the Helium price going up. But then,
Before you interrupt, could you just explain what onboarding means to those that aren't as familiar with Helium?
well, if you in Helium's case, or in our case in the future, a manufacturer manufactures the device, and then they handle all the sales and then delivery to the customer, and then the let's say join when the device first joins the network. That's the onboarding, and then of course they want to they want to buy the privilege to be on the for that device to be on the Kadena network. So let's call it an onboarding fee.
Right. So in order to get started with mining, you basically have to acquire the token and sort of pay into the system to onboard. And so there's been this critique level to Helium that a lot of the growth in the Helium token price has been primarily driven by these sort of onboarding fees. And I think what you're about to start talking about was, the other aspect of utility. And I'll sort of let you take it from there.
I definitely don't want that to be the only driver of the price. So as I said, I believe in the developing the ecosystem, and when what I mentioned, that it would be lovely for our miners to be our customers as well, and at the same time we want to prove to the community that we are making efforts to market the network to customers, and then not just in words or marketing slogans, but also in terms of the results. So I think that even though you could say that, oh, but first we need global coverage, but that's of course that's not true. If you can figure something out, like how do you acquire a customer when you don't have global coverage, or your coverage in a city or part of town, But I mean, there's obviously a lot of possibilities to make it kind of coincide with the location of the customer.
Yeah. So I think that's, a very interesting point, right? Which is to say that ultimately it's not just, Crankk or Helium or LoRa in general that we need to see these sort of externally focused engines of growth and, mechanisms for generating cash flow of becoming sustainable, right? We often talk about this in terms of crypto too, that, crypto has been fueled its growth for the first some years, primarily by speculation. And of course, there are applications that are becoming more and more important, right? Like there's been tremendous applications of crypto in the Ukrainian crisis as different money transfer mechanisms have shut down. There's been fairly large use cases of actual transfer of money that have become more and more important, or the El Salvador experiments, or but I think in terms of thinking about crypto and Web3 as actually driving services, what's really interesting to me about the Crankk model is that you're creating a wireless network. That's something that physically now exists that maybe didn't exist before, and now there's a capability for there to be low power devices that can connect to that. If I could start daydreaming for a moment here, if I don't say marmalade once a video, I don't get paid. No, I'm kidding. But I think that we've talked a bit about DNA, database of native assets, and some other NFT projects that are starting to think about how NFTs can kind of bridge into the physical world. And one of my sort of dreams here is to think about what some of these cross-pollination synergies might be, to think about, wow, hey, if you have an NFT, a digital representation of a physical object, and that physical object is in the real world. I mean, it'd be pretty swank if you could have this tie-in through like the Crankk network to help, keep track of that physical object and help bridge that digital to the physical world. So if you wouldn't mind entertaining an off-the-wall question that I've given you absolutely no prep for, would love to just sort of hear any meandering thoughts as to that idea.
Well, I had that idea too, but then I saw the other project. Although as some people noticed, I had the search idea quite early on, yeah, there would have been other technical things that needed to be in place for that to develop that further. I mean, you mentioned a lot of interesting points, like you mentioned Ukraine, and then the utility of crypto, and then we can think of Starlink as internet provider in those areas. LoRa has not just LoRaWan but P2P as well, so it has peer-to-peer as well. So you can very easily implement something that your LoRa miner is kind of a mesh node or a relay node for this type of communication. So even when a city, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to go into the details of the war, obviously, but let's say in emergency situations, mesh networks and long-range mesh networks ultimately could save lives. And then I'm very, very eager to explore those possibilities in the future.
Fascinating. Wow. So we got a bunch of questions coming in here. So I hope it's okay if we run a few minutes late. Does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great. So we have a question from Marco about, can you tell us a little bit more why you chose Kadena and not any other layer one with a low gas fee?
I think thanks for the question. I think I answered that. If there's one that has a database and then it's quite obvious, maybe there is another one which I didn't know. But Kadena looked plenty attractive enough for me, so it's like we are gonna be partners.
Right on. So back to the key notion of Pact as sort of a database query language that makes it very easy to do these applications. So we want to jump to another question from Deep Random Thinker. Great name. How does Crankk play a role in the Kadena ecosystem to increase adoption? What is your target market, and is there a marketing strategy?
I think those are two separate questions.
Yeah, so
Uh,
maybe.
I think that well, the interpretation of the first question for me, we're gonna generate an enormous amount of transactions. So that is, and then although
Yeah, we're
I
gonna have to
tried,
slow the change because of you, Peter.
yeah, no, but just saying that as I try to minimize,
Tease it, yeah.
gas fees. Try to. My previous one, that was a no go because it used too much. But I try to minimize it. Like Kadena says, please use it as a key value database. And yes, absolutely, we are using it. But still, I as I said, one of the cornerstones of my design for Crankk was that it starts from the blockchain and it is the choreography is done by the blockchain. So you need to pay more. I mean, you want to rely on it more, you need to pay more. So the current implementation, which I think is going to stay pretty much like this, well, it generates a lot of transactions. And then, so yeah, people will need a bunch of Kadena to earn Crankk. I mean, in a good way, but still.
Yeah, right. This is sort of saying that, this is an example how the blockchain is providing utility, right? Instead of paying AWS, Amazon Web Services, to run your database, in essence, you're paying this rather than paying this centralized, Jeff Bezos pad his wallet. Instead you're padding the wallet of anyone that's sort of in the Kadena ecosystem, because you're building something that has utility that then increases network usage, which then drives adoption. So this is the type of applications that we love to support, of course, are people that are doing things that go beyond speculation, right? That there's like something physical that you're providing. You're providing a real utility, and it's an example of a project and business model that, even though it's decentrally owned and even though it is sort of this Web3 project, it provides a utility that is not that different from what we might have seen in a Web2 era. Yeah.
I think we don't mind paying for something that's good, right? Just like cloud or it's someone else's computer. So anyway, yeah, the gas fees are well worth it.
Yeah.
And then moving on to the second question, what is your target market? Is there a marketing strategy? So as I alluded to it earlier, uh, uh, both corporate customers and in the IoT space and consumers are going to be target markets. And as far as marketing strategy, I don't have anything concrete at this point, but I think we'll get there soon.
Yeah. So maybe as a quick follow on to that, uh, you know, what's been amazing about watching Crankk so far has been just the rate of progress that you've made. Starting as a one-man team and building out all this functionality, both in terms of software, the blockchain interaction, the front end website, the smart contracts, the hardware that you had to figure out and get out there. The logistics of getting that out there, community management. A lot of tasks, a lot of responsibilities. For people in the community that are listening today, that maybe might be some, particularly enthusiastic members, where do you see as opportunities for people to become more involved with the project, and how do you sort of, think about opportunities around like expanding the team and getting, key community evangelists or people with, technical talent in to help move Crankk along?
Well, thank you for the question. I think the second part is that with this fortunate or unfortunate coincidence with what's going on with helium, there's a lot of attention. So I definitely got a lot of contacts, and then I'm hoping to develop the relationships needed for near term and long term growth. And then I think that with any kind of luck, we'll get there pretty soon. So we'll be more suited for a quicker growth than so far. And then of course, I love IoT. I love crypto, and then I sort of see Crankk as my playground to really live out my innovation dreams. So anyone with similar kind of enthusiasm, I fully agree with the idea that uh, having good people around is probably more than half the win.
Yeah. So if someone wants to help, formulate a marketing plan for Crankk, or contribute on development, or otherwise get involved with the project, what's the best way to get in touch with you to get involved with Crankk?
I respond to all DMs, and I would. I think that within a month or so, we'll be in a better position to, you know, have conversations, have more conversations with community members, and anyone who's interested. We'll be more than happy to have a conversation about it.
Awesome. So I think we'll just take maybe one or two more questions. We've gotten actually a lot of amazing questions here over just the past 2 or 3 minutes. People are clearly very hyped and excited. Want to highlight, of course, Crankk's Discord. So for those that are interested in getting in touch with Peter more directly, the Discord might be one good way to do that, and of course, staying up to date on announcements and happenings with the project. There's a question from Mostachu around how are you financing your project, your own investment, external investor, sales of equipment. One thing I'll highlight in case the question asker isn't aware is that Crankk is part of the first inaugural cohort of the grant recipients. So Peter is getting a grant to help support this work. But I think there's also a good question here about sort of project sustainability and how do we as builders create new projects in a crypto winter.
Yeah, the answer to the question is all three. So own investment, I've invested a lot of time and some money as well. External investors, we are in active conversations with them. And then sales of equipment, it counts as well. So that's all. And of course, mentioning Kadena grant. And then I also want to mention that in Kadena grant's case, obviously it's not just the money. A lot more has to do with being able to say that we have a partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we try to be focused on is tailoring what we can do to help with each project's needs. So whether that's in terms of figuring out right timing for AMA spotlights, or helping to spread word, or in some cases doing more technical dives, connecting people with resources, helping connect projects together. Our role is effectively, I like to think about us as being the white glove service that tries to just help our builders as much as we possibly can. And we try and help every builder, but of course we have to allocate resources. And so we especially try to help projects that are in the grants cohorts.
Yeah, I had a contact yesterday from a Kadena guy who told me how to do proper load balancing for chain web nodes. Thank you very much for that.
Right on. Okay, so we have there's a couple questions around the token itself. I'll maybe sort of just throw those out there, and feel free to plead the fifth for any you don't want to answer. A question: will Crankk be on CADX?
If it's up to me, it will be.
Right
We'll
on.
do it. I know we talked a lot about ROI and being able to calculate return on investment, and people would like to know. That's very, very, very understandable, and then I totally subscribe to that. So as soon as possible, we are working on it, and then we try to establish a value and then ability to exchange.
Yep. All right. Well, we're already a little bit over time, and so I think this might be a good place to end here. Apologies for those whose questions we didn't get around to. Would encourage you to go on the Discord and follow up there. And of course, we hope to have Peter again on an AMA or Twitter Spaces sometime soon for more interaction. But I think just to give my quick summary, I think Crankk is a tremendously exciting project on Kadena, and not just specifically on Kadena, but a tremendously exciting project in crypto and Web3 at large. It's clear from Helium that there has been legs for LoRa as a system, but where Helium has misstepped as the first mover advantage, there's opportunities for Crankk as the fast follower to learn from those mistakes, learn from those missteps. Crankk doesn't need to operate its own blockchain network. The token doesn't need to be, driving most of its utility from gas fees. We can try and there's an opportunity here to have Crankk focus its utility more in terms of the end users and the applications that are ultimately using the LoRa network, as opposed to most of the transactions and most of the goods just being sort of the maintenance and the orchestration. I think there's tremendously exciting applications and domains, everything from NFTs to smart meters to to you name it, to trackers to IoT devices, and I think that there's also a huge opportunity here for people in the community to help get in on a project at the ground floor. It sounds that Peter's very open for people to reach out with ideas, with suggestions, with offers to help, and that starting in about a month, there may be some openings or availabilities on the team itself. So I think that for those that are here in the room today on the various platforms, you've picked a great one to tune into, and there's a huge number of opportunities ahead. And so I hope you'll join me in thanking Peter for his time and thank him for his creativity and the efforts that he's put into building a really cool next generation Web3 project.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be part of this community, and we are trying to give back. We appreciate what we have received so far and what we will receive in the future. And then we are really grateful, and then we try to give back. We'll do our best.
Right on, Peter. We'll appreciate that attitude. It's been wonderful having you up here.
Thank
you. Oh, didn't mean to cut you off there. All right. So that may be the end of today's session, but this is just the beginning, of course, of our AMA Spotlight series. We'll be doing several more of these to highlight exciting projects building on Kadena in the coming weeks and months. Next week, just to give a sneak preview, we will have an AMA with a lending platform that some of you may know the name of. So very excited for that. And be sure to tune in. Please give follows on social media. You can follow Crankk at IOCrankk on Twitter. That's IOCRANKK. And of course, if you would like to get more involved with the project, check out their Discord channel. And for those in the Kadena army that haven't yet signed up or followed on Twitter or Discord or Telegram, definitely go check out the Kadena.io website and find us on social media. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Thank you all so much for the great questions. Please keep that up. The earlier you ask in the session, the easier it will be for me to appropriately allocate time. So sorry to those that I didn't get around to at the end. It wasn't a reflection of how good the questions were. They're really, really excellent, and wish we could talk here all day. But as always, thank you all for your support of the Kadena ecosystem, for those that are hodlers, for those that are builders, for those that are evangelists. We appreciate all of you, and you're part of what makes this ecosystem so great. Until next time, happy Monday here on Wednesday. Take care.